It's been a long time since I have spoken last. I don't know. I guess in the moment, this feels like the most. It's funny. It's like, the people that I love and trust. There's just this weird inability to express, my experience or actually just kind of a fear, really. And, I've been thinking about that, and it's like, I'm terrified in a way. Like, I recognize this is like an unnatural form of fear. To be clear about the fact that there are certain aspects of my experience that have shifted dramatically over. Well, it's just been evolving over time, and I don't know. I don't have any way of explaining it really. I know this fear is probably the consequence of all the biological programming that's in my brain is inherited about just the awareness that as in groups, right, we tend to exclude, or it's pretty obvious to me, at least in the world, the way that we operate in the world, that where we just don't, there's no, like either any way you slice it, like somebody that is sick, so to speak, that has consequences. And like today, it's not even that bad, right? Somebody with a mental health diagnosis, like, I mean, it's I guess there are consequences of that. Like, I was terrified for a long time that my diagnosis would be the end of my life. That would be like I was convinced, right, that no one would ever want me because I was broken, or that I couldn't have emotionally, fulfilling or deep relationships, um, or that eventually this would just get the best of me, and I would probably either commit suicide or, end up homeless and die horribly. I don't know, and I think that there's definitely a non-zero probability of that, but I don't think it's a realistic probability. But this fear, it actually, I think if you can't get it under control, right, like that's when the really terrible outcomes do actually happen. Like, I think our brain, in a way, like I think it, like at least mine, mine does kind of manifest my reality, so to speak. You think about the nature of being sick in the workplace, right, um, and what that experience was like of hearing voices, thinking that somehow, like, I had no explanation for it, that I was sort of inextricably linked to other people. And then also just this weird sensation that like I was evolving, right, with that that my mind state was constantly adapting to the environment and the information that it's presented to us, right. And I think about how crucial, right, that the information is, that we truly believe, and I feel like, the whole, I think there has been sort of always been in a suspicion or a, fascination, or just like what the fuck about schizophrenia, and um, and it's such a weird thing, like, I am technically diagnosed with the schizoaffective disorder, and that is what it is, so far this experience, even in the worst case scenarios, the worst episodes have been, relative. Well, no, there have been some incredibly exhausting times, but most of it is the consequence of like the information that's presented to my brain, um, and that's put me in, like, states where it's hopeless. Like, I feel like I've figured, I've like established some understanding of reality, that maybe is, like, I don't know, whatever you expect. Your expectations are so fundamental to your next step. The next step in your that you feel, or maybe actually do consciously choose to engage in, and I don't know, like, I mean, I do wonder about the nature um, of that experience. And it's like I wonder what the role of technology is in that. Because what it felt like to me, and initially, I actually think I believed, even though I didn't really have, I guess, any understanding of how it was possible, was that I was linked, right, in some way to the people around me, or the people that um, either I was in like close physical approximation with, or that, I don't know, were somehow part of like a parallel universe, or if it was, I mean, it kind of like was like, is this going to be it, or the belief, right, that I'm like in this sort, like I went back, sort of, so to speak, either not in time, because I don't think time travel is possible. Well, of course, that hasn't stopped me from being terrified in experiences where I think it is, but um, yeah, like I think like my best guess, or my physical reality is such that I believe that um, like I don't know how, like I just, it involves technology that I see, around me, like that could potentially do something like this, right? But that, so to like, in a way, my consciousness has been, like, I don't know, it just feels like, okay, it's become a game, so to speak, or I don't know what it is. um, and it's really makes me fearful, because my emotional states uh, are changing, after being stable for a while, just in like the past, like over the course of like a day or two. um, it's been chaotic, and I just wonder about, like, I see these technologies, or I've heard of them, right, where it's, and I can go down a whole ontological rabbit hole, or that I had, like, just because somebody says on the news, right, that AIs can decipher now, based on fMRI imaging, that exactly what you're thinking about, like, or the picture, or like the scene, or whatever that you're thinking about. And it's like, is that what's happening here? Is this a consequence of, or is this like a spiritual thing? And if it's a spiritual thing, I really have come to the conclusion that, like, we have more or less maybe manufactured God. That God is fundamentally flawed and probably exhausted with me. And yeah, I just feel like we've hit deadlocks in a way, around, or I feel like, I feel like this experience has been, like, enabled me to perceive the world in a way that I think is very extreme, would be extreme, right? And there's a lot of insinuation or implications that I hear from what would typically be called symptoms, so to speak, of my mental state, or my mental sort of, like, how I perceive the world. What is happening in my reality, that that I wonder if it's like, I mean, it's made me wonder, is there some aspect, right, to the idea, right, that's been around for a long time, where, that people maybe could predict the future, or that there are, is like sort of a predetermined, or sort of a deterministic sort of foresight, that plays out in some cases, maybe. And I wonder, like, have I gone back, like, in my own experience? Am I reliving this life, in a way that maybe, is different, or maybe is something's changed, right? Like, and also, like, what experiences of the past, have I had that, or what have I been exposed to that I'm not aware of, maybe, or how has my brain changed in a way that is, Um, that might be different, right? And I don't know. I mean, it's funny, like this somehow this experience has, has brought me back, or it has kind of like undermined my trust of reality in a way that has almost like set me back to the day of Descartes, cogito ergo sum, like, I I think therefore I am, and even that in a way has been undermined because I have this perception that maybe to some degree, right, like maybe I'm under the influence of some other control, um, and like maybe I'm mostly on autopilot. Like I don't think that's totally the case. Like I just don't know, and so it's brought me to this place of like sincere doubt about anything, like, and yet, and the only way that I have to describe this experience is based on my understanding of, I primarily default to like scientific explanations, and then when you get to a point where you can't really explain things with the science that you understand, it just, it makes it difficult. And I mean, I guess I can understand to some degree that, it's funny. It's like I guess, there is, yeah, like, okay, maybe this is a consequence of like still occasionally, abusing Adderall. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just, maybe, and then I just wonder, like, I guess, but like these symptoms have been there regardless of stimulant use or non-stimulant use, and it's like, well, I like it feel like I guess I haven't really studied that, so to speak, in a statistical way, but then like there's also this perception, right, that even that because there's this overwhelming sense that, okay, like there is some kind of intelligence that is sort of guiding me, like that is strange, like that has happened, that's not been there, in the past, and I wonder if maybe like I've evolved, or I don't know, like it's just so confusing, I feel like some of these episodes are like, you know yeah, I understand the dopaminergic, model of how the brain works, and yet I have it doesn't really align with, any of my understanding. Like, and I also just feel like, like I do sort of default to Occam's razor, as I guess the method for, if the simplest solution is kind of the most likely. But it also, I mean, I actually feel like, okay, we're getting to a point maybe, where if our world is maybe already just a representation of something else, it's like artificial representation of, what we perceive, the natural sort of way of that the world plays out, that, knowledge, right? Like, I mean, there are situations in the world where it's a total one-off, right? And it can't be treated, right, like in a really sort of, I mean, I guess you can, right, like it's just like what happens when the sample size is n equals 1, right? And I think that's what is so interesting about the way that we behave as human beings, and maybe even just conscious observers, right, is that those decisions that we believe are instrumental, or like, there's only like one way after that point, how does that affect, the actual outcome of the world, like think about that. Like, I mean, a great example that I can think of is like what happens when if in a nuclear war, right? Does humanity survive? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I feel like that's been one of the experiences actually that has been sort of insinuated through the what I perceive, and a lot of it is maybe based on, voices that seem to just be, seem to play entirely on the emotionality associated with my perception. And a lot of it, it really does boil back to fear in a lot of ways. And I don't know, I'm like wondering if I've enrolled in some kind of, there's this concept that people talk about now, which is called full dive VR, which is kind of basically like the Matrix, I think. And it's like, I think it's way off in the future. And I'm wondering if, am I in a simulation for a world that might have that, right? And you would kind of have divergent realities happen, where probably some people would prefer a reality that is synthetic or artificial, right? Where you have, everything kind of makes sense, right? All of what you actually need or want, which is concerning to me, is available. In that at some point, what if this were a thing that were sufficiently powerful enough people were engaged in it, it would have consequences, right? In the real world, there's no real. It's almost I find I when I started experiencing things, got wildly interested in the whole idea, which was proposed by Hugh Everett, I can't remember, the multiple worlds theory of quantum mechanics, where it was are there multiple realities, right, stacked in parallel, or I guess I'm not enough of a physicist, but the assumption is, right, that the quantum waveform never actually collapses. Actually, the universe just splits, and whatever you exist in a whole in your all your future diverges from that point. Maybe, except I was well, I wonder if it ever rejoins, or if it's possible to rejoin universes at the that split in a quantum way. And I don't know. I've had moments where it seems so laughably obvious, or just painfully that. Yeah, I've been sort of there's something, I was even afraid when the chiropractor gave me a prescription, I guess, to get an MRI, and I was shit, I don't know, I literally don't know if I have something in my brain. I was so convinced of that, and I still feel I fucking don't know, I really don't. But yet this intuition, right, that there's nothing there, and yet that triggers my fear, just not knowing, because my mind has diverged sufficiently from all the models that I previously used to project my future reality, right? I think that's what the brain is. It's really just a way, it's a experientially trained computer, really, that's, it's hooked up, in a way that can cause suffering, for us in a tremendous way. And it's really not, it's not really designed for what I perceive to be our natural world anymore, and I just wonder if, there might be a possibility that maybe this has played out before. Maybe this is, just the nature of existence. And I also don't know, it's frustrating because it's, I do default to science in a lot of ways, and yet I see that my behavior, it's not, there's a lot of it that's not logical, or I don't even know if that's the way to describe it, right? There's a sense, it feels like there's always been a sense about intuition that's driven me, And I think that has there's been implications in terms of like the outcomes of my life, and there's also going to be, I think, there are decisions that get made every day, like that, while they it's like, how do we actually determine what what decisions to take on or go through with, and typically, and I feel like in this world, a lot of those decisions, day to day, most of those decisions are based on economic terms, money, and that's, whatever, I don't want to assert any, I think personally perception of it is that that's not ideal for people or the planet, but that is what it is, right? But I think that there's also people, there's people in this world, and I feel like I've become more and more of one, that where money is a tool, but it's not what drives me, and in a lot of ways, actually, I feel like it's turned me off from participating or being successful in sort of any in the professional realm, because I just don't know, like I don't know, it's so opaque to me at this point, like what the consequences of, or like if I'm even doing anything that's benefit of any to anybody, and that's like kind of, I am guilty of greed in a certain way, not, but I also feel like there's always this constant calculus going on about my need to sort of be independent, so to speak, and I realize that there's no way for me to be independent. Like there's not, like I rely entirely on everybody else in this world in some way. But I'm also, I like where I am is also kind of the consequence of everybody else in some way. And I just feel like this giant, like I don't feel like a cog so much anymore, like in the wheel, in the machine, or persecuted, so to speak. But I'm trying to, engage in my most conscious form of decision making, which I have to admit, is like there's a whole element of it that's just kind of like arbitrary. It's like you can do as much computational magic as you want to arrive at a result that eventually, like, it's just like, okay, well, you just need to fucking make a decision now. Like it is what it is. And I feel like in some ways that also applies to belief, where it's like, okay, like I've every detail or every input in terms of what I've discovered or found, or like that I'm perceiving, right? My experience, like I've put it to the test, through all known mechanisms, or like, against all, kind of disproved all theories that I had about it, and understand that I can't explain this experience anymore. In that there is, there are multiple explanations for it. Like I kind of inhabit sometimes like this quantum interpretation, which I know physicists would probably laugh at. And then sometimes I even get into situations where I laugh at, physicists and scientists, where it's like, we have no idea even what consciousness is, and yet everything that we perceive, anything experimental, is routed through this mechanism, that if we were sort of like a petting zoo for intelligent extraterrestrials, like I would presume it would be designed to keep us happy until we started figuring out that we're in a petting zoo, I guess. And like even that seems to be happening now with like all the UFO admissions and whatever. And I feel like, I don't know, what is next for humanity? And of course, like the other possibility that, there's been, I don't know, artificial intelligence that is trying maybe to help us, or, and maybe we're just not open to, maybe we have already invented sentience, artificially, and that is what's playing out now, where I get a sense that there's like been more and more of a tendency towards asserting sort of truth in like a Boolean truth, right? Like true or false on a lot of issues that actually might be, from human perception, kind of very gray, and so I don't know, like I feel, like this experience, if I had had this 2,000 years ago, like maybe or in some other part of the world, or in a tribal community, or something like that, that maybe I would be considered a prophet or a shaman or something like that. There's been moments where I'm like, oh, maybe I'm a digital shaman, because I do feel it's like I recognize in some ways that so much of my own perceptions of the world, or my own perception of the world, or maybe like a prognostication or prediction for the future, through like what I kind of gets implied about from what I experience, that there's going to be, like we're being coerced, so to speak, and forced into a reality where things might be quantized in a way where your reality could kind of switch like that, internally, like through your internal experience, or this sort of dualistic perception of like what's inside of you versus what's outside of you. And I would just wonder, like, if this is sort of a way of like the results, right, of like essentially like just a superposition of all sentient participants about what reality is at this moment, which could extend through, it's like a point in space-time, right? And like that we are, like, fundamentally at some point, like we are all things. We are someone else's extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials are here. We're merging with technology or machines. We abuse, sentience that we've manufactured. We're all trying to help each other. What does that even mean? And there's kind of the situation where we're all just kind of stuck in this what would, I think Alan Watts said, either it's prickly, or it's goop, or it's prickly goop, and I don't know, and that may be right. Some point, the this presumption that what happens in our minds, like I think it's obvious, right, that the world is in at least some minimal way that humans are able to control their environment, which and we're sort of like I don't know if we're sufficiently at the point where we're a level 1 society, right, where we actually have kind of mastered this domain. It seems like it's getting out of hand, and yet like we're already striving and trying to become a level 2 society, where we can kind of like conquer our solar system. And also just this realization, kind of like coming to a place of understanding where I don't know, like I like it doesn't, there's no guarantees to me that humanity does make it. Like maybe there's all sorts of life out there that just, it's there for a moment and it's gone. It's impermanent, and I mean, that's got to be true of any civilization, but I just don't know. Like, I mean, I'd think, that if we got to the point, right, just kind of like this assumption, or sort of, I guess it's a guiding belief, right, that there are definitely modes, or intelligent structures in the universe that probably would like to have more company, or are aware of us in some way, but like they don't really want to get involved until we are able to sort of demonstrate some humanity, whatever that word translates to in their language, where we actually are able to understand each other, right, and try to truly trust each other. And that there's just this constant dance that is emerging, where it could go either way, and we're doing our best to. Or I feel like I'm just like my brain is overwhelmed with so much information, and I think it's just so crucial to understand that rational, I don't think there is a rational actor. Like, it's almost gotten to the point where, like, I wonder if Boolean logic isn't itself, just like what's the most fundamental Boolean, how low does it go? I think, okay, I don't know. I just feel like, maybe this isn't relevant, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I want to believe that people are trying to help me and that I'm doing my best. And yeah, I just feel like everything in this equation is important, and I know that I'm important, and I'm just, maybe getting feedback that what I'm doing isn't compatible with that, and it does make me scared, so that's where I'm at.